Ebenano woke before the sun. Roosters announced the morning, not with urgency, but with certainty. Women stirred fires beneath blackened pots. Men lifted tools worn smooth by generations of use. Children ran barefoot across red earth paths, their laughter echoing between mud houses and tall grasses. Life was hard in Ebenano, but it was shared. Food was scarce, yet hunger was communal. No one truly lived alone, except one woman. At the very edge of the village, where the soil grew dry and the trees stood thin and twisted, there was a hut that leaned slightly to one side. Inside that hut lived Akwete. Akwete was old, her back bent under the weight of years. Her hands shook when she worked. Her voice had grown thin and rarely used. She was a widow. Her husband had died many seasons ago, taken by an illness no herbal remedy could cure. And Akwete was barren. No children had ever called her mother. No small feet had ever run toward her at sunset. When her husband died, the last thread tying her to joy snapped quietly. The village mourned him, but no one mourned what Akwete became. Each afternoon, she sat outside her hut, pretending to rest. In truth, she watched. She watched mothers scold their children, then pull them close seconds later. She watched boys chase footballs made of rags. She watched girls dream aloud about weddings and futures. Every laugh reached her like an insult. What began as sorrow slowly turned into something sharper: envy. Envy did not arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, fed by loneliness, watered by resentment. At night, when the village slept, envy whispered to Akwete, "Why them? Why not you? Why should their homes be full while yours is empty?" She tried to ignore it. She prayed. She distracted herself with small tasks. But envy is patient, and over time, it began to feel justified. She told herself the village had forgotten her, that people only pretended to care, that their happiness was a kind of cruelty. And slowly, dangerously, she began to believe that someone else deserved to feel pain too. Among the children Akwete watched was a boy named Izundu. He was 13 years old, thin, energetic, always smiling. Izundu loved football more than anything. He played until the sky darkened and his feet ached. He laughed loudly, trusted easily. He had no enemies, no reputation for trouble. He was simply a child. One ordinary evening, Izundu and his friends played near the edge of the village, close to Akwete's hut. As the sun dipped low, Izundu kicked off his worn slippers and ran barefoot, forgetting them in the dust. It was an innocent mistake, one that would nearly cost him everything. That night, Akwete cooked alone. Her meal was thin, as always. As she stirred the pot, she felt a familiar ache in her chest. Not hunger, loneliness. She stepped outside for air and noticed the slippers lying near her hut. Something inside her snapped. Those slippers belonged to youth, to joy, to everything she no longer had. And in that moment, envy found a voice. A terrible thought. What if she accused him? She knew the law. Everyone did. In Ebenano, such an accusation was not a complaint. Her hands trembled, and then she decided. By morning, Akwete was crying. She told anyone who would listen that food had been stolen from her pot. She pointed to the slippers. She spoke of hunger, of violation, of disrespect. Her voice shook convincingly. The villagers gathered. Fear spreads faster than truth. Someone ran for the elders. Someone ran to Izundu's home. Izundu was dragged from his house. His mother screamed. His father begged. The boy was confused, terrified. "I didn't take anything," he cried. But his words were small against tradition. The elders assembled. Akwete stood before them, shaking, weeping, pointing. The slippers were presented as evidence. Izundu stood alone. No defender, no protection, only fear. He denied the accusation again and again, but denial meant nothing. The law was clear. The elders whispered among themselves. Then the decision was made. Izundu would face punishment at sunset. That night, Ebinano did not sleep. Some villagers felt uneasy. Some mothers held their children tighter. "He's just a boy," one woman whispered. "I've never known him to steal," another replied. But fear silenced most. Tradition was heavy, and tradition rarely listened. Only one woman refused to sleep, Mama Nkiru, the oldest elder in Ebinano. She had seen many seasons, many lies, many regrets. Something about Akwete's story did not rest well in her spirit. At dawn, she spoke quietly to the children. She listened, and slowly, the truth emerged. Izundu had never entered Akwete's hut. He had never touched her pot. He had only left his slippers while playing. The accusation was false. The elders confronted Akwete. At first, she denied everything. Then her strength failed her. Years of grief spilled out. Loneliness poured from her soul. She admitted the lie. The village fell silent. They had almost destroyed an innocent life. The punishment was stopped. Hands lowered. Voices hushed. Izundu collapsed into his mother's arms. His father wept openly. Justice had come, barely in time. But justice was not finished. That night, the elders gathered. Some argued for mercy. "She is old. She has suffered enough." Others disagreed. "If this lie had succeeded," one elder said, "a child would be gone. And if we forgive her," another replied, "what will stop the next lie?" Silence followed. Then Mama Nkiru spoke. Her voice was calm and final. Akwete would not be executed. Death would end her suffering too quickly. Instead, she would live, but she would no longer exist. She was stripped of her name, stripped of her status, stripped of her place in Ebinano. No one would greet her. No one would feed her. No one would speak her name again. She would remain in the village, completely invisible. If she spoke, no one would answer. If she cried, no one would turn. The elders called it living exile. At dawn, Izundu walked free. As he passed Akwete's hut, she stood at the doorway, waiting, hoping. Izundu stopped, looked at her, then turned away and walked on. Days passed, weeks. Akwete still lived, but she did not belong. Children avoided her path. Women looked through her. Men treated her like air. Her voice went unused. Her name went unspoken. Even her anger faded, because there was no one left to blame. Seasons changed. Akwete grew weaker, not from hunger, but from being unseen. She died quietly, not surrounded by enemies, not surrounded by justice, but surrounded by life that refused to acknowledge her existence. Her hut collapsed. Grass grew over it, as if she had never lived at all. Izundu grew older, stronger, kinder. But he never forgot how close death had come. The village never forgot either. From that day on, no accusation was accepted without proof. The story of Akwete was told for generations. A warning, a lesson, that lies can destroy lives, that justice without mercy becomes cruelty, and that sometimes the worst punishment is not death, but being forgotten while still alive.